a term that he borrows from Felix Guattari, sound like cosmos or cosmos spasm. A word can sound like world, and poetical can sound like political. And the beautiful thing is that this is exactly what he is trying to convey. So you can maybe see this fragment I chose as a kind of poem, and maybe like me, if you find it back on YouTube, hear something new in it every time. I'll just play only once now, but yeah, so I have to say that he is not answering a question in this bit that I choose. It's a question from the people sitting there in the type of situation that we are in. Someone asks, what type of artworks could escape the mechanisms of the art world that has become increasingly and possibly completely capitalist?
Sorry. No, I'm almost totally dead. So okay. I guess something, but sometimes... Okay. First, this definition, which is simple, stupid maybe, between antenna and transformer. And I see the aesthetic action, the poetical action. When I say poetical, I very much refer to the etymology of the word. The word art is not, I don't like the word art. It's difficult to use. It's too contaminated by the relation with the market. And but the word poetry has such a meaningful etymology. Poiein means to create. And so the poetical act is first of all an act, a symptomatic act. It's a symptom. You perceive the suffering or the pleasure. You perceive and you transform this perception into a symptomatic dimension for work, a symptomatic work. But it is not only that, it can be something more. And it can be a transformer of the relation between perception and projection, what you receive and what you project on the screen of the world. And so Guattari speaks of poetry as a chaoid, a strange word that means an elaborator, a processor, a transformer of a cosmic situation. So let me go deep in this definition because it's useful. Guattari says that we are living in the age of the cosmic spasm. You know what is a spasm, a medical expression that means the acceleration of a physical something, a muscle, for instance, or the brain. A brain spasm, it's going too fast, and it's provoking the suffering of this acceleration. This is the spasm. And Guattari says we live in a cosmic spasm. The spasm, okay, is the spasm. What is cosmic? Cosmos, in Guattari, is the process that gives us the ability, the possibility of shifting from a dimension of chaos to a sort of new harmony. I don't like the word harmony. New order. I don't like the word order. Syntony. Syntony is the good word. Syntony means a surrounding universe. Guattari speaks of retournelles and the refrain. The retournelle in Guattari is a semiotic concatenation that gives you the possibility of entering in a relation with the stars, the sky, the ground, the other, the body. You see, the retournelle is this tool that makes possible the creation of a concatenation. The concatenation goes berserk at a certain point because of the spasm, but you are looking for a new symphony. The poet is doing that. What is the poet doing? The poet is trying to find an eurythmic relation between semiosis, the production of signs, and the surrounding world.
So I'll stop him there. I'll interrupt him there. You can find it. Maybe I can send the link through to to your tutors if you want to find it. He continues, but I realize it may be a bit long for now. However much I love his enthusiasm, and also, I wonder sometimes if someone with a belief so great in poetry that it can only exist if you do not write poetry yourself. Because, of course, if you do so, you also know what are the boundaries and the limits most of all. And it's not in this great kind of ecstatic situation that you can create. In fact, I think I can only write if I don't believe in much anymore, and the words are the only thing that maybe can help me find my way back to the world or my environment. I would like to place this. Have to quieting him down. So it is of an entire different nature than the book by Ben Lerner you may be familiar with, The Hatred of Poetry. In this book, he starts by saying, and this is something I recognize, that if he's on a party and people ask him, so what do you do? What is it you do for a living? He doesn't often say, I am a poet. He says something vague like, I'm in publishing, or because he is afraid of the reaction that he might not be taken so seriously if he claims or states that he is a poet. In fact, no art has been denounced as often as poetry. Even poets themselves do it. I too dislike it, wrote Maria Moore. I will not read out the whole poem, but I hope it's big enough for you to be able to read it on the screen. In this poem, called Poetry, can you read it from the back? Or shall I read a little bit out? I too dislike it. There are things that are important beyond all this fiddle. Reading it, however, with a perfect contempt for it, one discovers that there is in it, after all, a place for the genuine. Hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise if it must. So she even describes a kind of maybe physical reaction that poetry can give. And one of the most lovely lines of poetry that I've ever come across is right there. Imaginary gardens with real toads in them. Just pause for a minute and think what that is. An imaginary garden with an actual living toad right in the middle of it. I think this kind of overlap of the imaginary and the actual, that what you can maybe touch, is what poetry thrives on. And it stands there like really kind of nonchalant in the middle of the poem. I think it's very beautiful. Maria Moore has had many followers, and one recent one is, I'll go back to the picture, Mia Yu, a South Korean poet living in Utrecht, at the moment. She was educated in California and is one of the many English writing poets in the Netherlands that find it hard to get a stage. This is, I didn't prepare to talk about this, but I will probably wander off more often in this lecture. The strange thing is that using English in the Dutch literature scene, I expect it's not much different in Belgium, is not very accepted. Whereas, of course, in visual arts, you know that you will be nowhere if you don't use English. And it's a very, very strange divide. If I ask my Dutch publisher, would you publish these English poems I wrote? He will say, can't you translate them? Can't you translate them back into Dutch? It's something they are uneasy with. I think also fed by the discussion that is very much alive in Dutch universities at the moment, where they are afraid that the Dutch will be pushed away by the increasingly international type of education, where English is the main spoken tongue. So there's a kind of fear of losing the Dutch language or something. It's a bit benauwd, as we say in Dutch. So back to Ben Lerner. Many more people agree they hate poetry than they can agree what poetry is. I too dislike it, says Ben Lerner, and have largely organized my life around it and do not experience that as a contradiction, because poetry and the hatred of poetry are inextricably in ways it is my purpose to explore. Lerner takes the hatred of poetry as the starting point of his defense of the art. He looks at poetry's greatest haters, beginning with Plato, Plato's famous claim that an ideal city has no place for poets, who could only corrupt and mislead the young, and both its greatest and worst practitioners, providing close readings at Keats, Dickinson, McGonagall, Whitman, and others. Throughout, he attempts to explain the noble failure at the heart of every truly great and horrible poem. So, loving and hating poetry, it's obvious, but maybe it's time to actually share some poems with you that I am writing at the moment. So in the last 2 years, I think we can say, with COVID determining how we live and how we do not live, I weirdly, like the only thing that worked in my life was that I found peaceful time behind my desk, because of a lot of things didn't happen. And a plan to go to Poland, where my grandmother is from. She's not in Poland here, as you can see. My plan was to visit the place of birth of my grandmother, who came from Katowice in Poland. She was from a mine workers' family. My plan was to go to Katowice and find out more about her life, possibly even her mother or her mother's mothers, because just online I cannot find anything. She did not speak about her past. Only in fairy tales did she convey some personal hints at what happened to her, taking roles of different fairy tale figures, changing them. So I was told horrible and not horrible, beautifully told, but shocking in their content versions of Little Red Riding Hood, for example, and then the wolf would be soldiers instead of the wolf, and she would turn the whole story into something that she could tell and that would say something about what she had experienced. And the only thing I know for sure is that she was, after her father collapsed in a mine in the north of France, because they worked like seasonal workers going all over Europe, they placed his body outside the mine, so to make sure that the factory of the mine had no responsibility towards the widow. This is something that was normal in the time. And then the children, I will have to skip a bit. I think there are 10 children. My great-grandmother was pregnant here, had to find their own way of earning their money. They were sent walking towards vague addresses. This was in the 1930s. So my grandma had an address in Den Haag. She had her 2 sisters, and they walked to Den Haag, where they found a job as chambermaids or something like this, cleaners in a house. They had also heard that if you get pregnant by a Dutch guy, he will marry you. And they all did this successfully. And they had very happy marriages, lifelong marriages, and as far as I could tell. And it's a long story. I will not tell you everything, but my grandmother became paranoid schizophrenic at a later age, and this is when I started to get to know her most, and I tried to understand what was going on in her brain. And my poems that I started to write, not being able to go to Poland because of COVID and the limits of traveling, I had to do it in my own mind. So the book has become an exploration of what is it to belong, what is it to be home, what is it to be not at home, what is it to feel part of a nationality. Like, I've always had a kind of warm feeling for anything from Poland, but this is tied to my grandmother. It's not tied to the politics of Poland, for example. Is it connected to language? I thought maybe because of the sounds of language that you are familiar with tie you to a certain familiar feeling. And because I wanted to explore this, I have started to learn Polish for this book. It's a bit a tribute to my grandmother. And learning the language has structured the poems. So with every kind of new word that I learned or was able to speak, I constructed a new poem. It's become a very strange book. To my relief, my editor said, "It's such a strange book." Well, I don't know if it's a relief, but he said, "It's such a strange book, but I don't know what to change about it." So it's a kind of, it was at least a kind of go to have it published. It's also a strange book because I realized it was a book about women, and I've never addressed the topic of feminism so directly in my work. I realized that through the different generations of mothers that I give a voice in the book, there are also different types of feminists inside me. And I think they have to do with these generations. So there is a very aggressive feminist in me who I feel is like a scream. She's an activist. There is a very patient feminist in me who's like a fountain. She's more like my mother. And my mother, let me say the fountain that I see for this is a kind of fountain with eternal dishes and foam inside the fountain. And she just says, well, things take time. You know, things are not right yet, things are not equal, but you have to have patience. So it's another type of urgency. And then there is a hairdryer who, of course, also helps to maybe cover the weird position of women who maybe if they were just thinking for themselves wouldn't pay so much attention to how they look, but then they do, and the whole kind of confusion about being a woman in these times. And the hairdryer doesn't know anything for sure. I think I feel maybe most like the hairdryer, who is always hesitating and doubting. And then the scream says, well, there is also the dead one. There's also a dead, nameless feminist who doesn't even get to have a voice. And these 4, and then there's also an echo, so there's 5 voices in the book that talk to each other, and they interrupt each other, and they never agree. And sometimes they agree, but then it's really weird, and you cannot really believe it. I'm a bit late with announcing this, but my whole idea for the talk was, I think it was probably mentioned in the introduction online, is that I wanted to go through my work with the focus of things not finished. So this is not my typical presentation. Normally I pull out my portfolio and say, this is what I made there, this is what I made there. And then for this talk, maybe also because it has been quite a while since I made a lecture, I thought it's more interesting to look at what has not been done yet, what is not finalized, what is not successfully somewhere or unsuccessfully somewhere, because, as I realized when preparing this talk, I can even look at my works that are in galleries or in museums as not finished. And I think I feel much more comfortable with that. If I had a chance, I would probably also still change them. These images that I share with you are the possible covers of my book. This, I have to say, is an image by Verena Blok, who is at the Rijksacademy at the moment. She is a photographer and filmmaker. She has a grandmother in Poland, and I recognize my own. It's like, it's her. So this could be the cover. My editor has a preference for this image. I think it could also look good on a book, being folded around the covers. My grandma is this one, Clara. And I took this image as a reminder for myself, because I'm working on objects, trying to find a good material for objects that I can make a diamond out of. My grandmother was always telling me, look carefully around you, you might find a diamond. And only later did I realize that this, of course, is also what sometimes happened in my workers' families. The lucky ones could find a diamond somewhere in the mine, and their lives would be saved. They could be suddenly in a whole other possibility with their lives. And even on a very old age, she would still tell me, look around carefully, you might find the diamond. And I think I would like to make them out of coals, brown coal, or the things that you heat your fire with. And to my surprise, I found this kind of one ready, which already has the shape of a diamond, but it's really expensive. So I think I'll have to try and make them myself. Maybe mold them with charcoal dust into the shape of diamonds. Yeah, I'm still looking into it. I will read you one poem just to give you a sense of what they are like. It's based on the word szmażonka, which was the only word that my grandmother passed on to her family, refusing actually to speak Polish with my mother because she wanted to be as normal Dutch, whatever that is, as possible. She didn't want to stand out. So she never spoke a word of Polish with her children except with her sisters. But szmażonka was made on days that were to be celebrated. In fact, it's nothing more than roerei, scrambled eggs. Żma. On days that are to be celebrated, my mother stands up straight to announce żma, like the round mother's żma. When I am round, I will refuse an apron, zong, I do not hear breasts sighing. I do not want to speak in riddles and remember who I said what about behind another person's back, kachka. The sounds make garlands tensioning the house wave. We will stay here. I allow my stomach in pieces. Szmażonka. On days that are to be celebrated, the mothers make szmażonka. You need more eggs than your hands can carry. Lukewarm mlek, oh, spoons of butter, and a steady voice to drag Polish swear words by the ankles, which are not always distinguishable from Hail Marys, but that's another story. Find your own rhythm, Kaczka. Think of your past while urging the lazy yolks around the pan and take your time to look into a blurring distance. Drama is welcome here, as we might not have much else. Don't look too closely at what is being scrambled. When the shape shifting solidifies in your stomach, that's when you call out szmażonka to all your family members, szmażonka. The dead and those with no names or face, szmażonka, with arms stretched out wide in all the empty, revolving rooms that you are. So I hope to finish the book by spring. It may come out in this period. It's very much a book actually about what I didn't find, about emptiness. And yeah. Maybe in a way this work is also about what I didn't find. It started when I visited the Goethe House in Frankfurt. I was hoping to find the actual desk. This is also how it is advertised, the actual desk where Goethe wrote Faust. I know that Arne read Goethe as a puber. How do you say this? As a young adult. Later age as well, like me. And even though I know these type of things are maybe nonsense, I do sometimes think it is attractive to touch actual pieces that people I admire have touched. It's like some kind of holy experience, which you of course make yourself. But nonetheless, I was there in the Goethe House, and there was the desk, and I touched it. And I left the place, and as something to remember the experience by, I took a postcard with me. But then I looked at the postcard, and I saw that it was slightly different. It looked slightly different than what I just had seen. So I went back, and I saw that there were different portraits hanging above the desk. So that's strange, like if it was the authentic situation in which he wrote, like how can it be changed? And then I left the building a bit like disappointed, and a small notice at the end of the building says, the whole building has been reconstructed after bombing during the Second World War. So I had been in a complete fantasy situation. It was a reconstruction of the authentic situation. But the Germans are, of course, because most of their stuff was bombed, they have to find a way of how to then, deal with their history. I do not blame them, I don't know. But then I thought it's interesting for me to know who decided then to put different portraits. What happened here? And if they changed it once, maybe they changed it more often. And after a lot of talking and actually also some lies, I was able to enter the archive of the Goethe House. And I found more than 60 different versions of the authentic situation in which Goethe has written his work. And sadly, the Goethe House is not so proud of it. Like, I wanted to show it there. I thought what a great exhibition it would be if I can show this at the actual place. They wanted to know nothing about it. So I had to go through the photographers, and I had scanned enough already to make this work. The poem you hear is a poem by Goethe, translated by Babelfish, and read by an electronic voice, which is slowed down to an extent that it sounds, I think, almost natural.
Do you know the land where the lemons bloom? The gold orange glow in the dark foliage, and blows a gentle breeze from the blue sky. The myrtle still high stands of laurel. You know it well, then would I go, oh my love, with you. Do you know the house? On pillars rests its roof, the hall shines it. Quote, do you know the land where the lemons bloom? The gold orange glow in the dark foliage, and blows a gentle breeze from the blue sky. The myrtle still high stands of laurel. You know it well, then would I go, oh my love, with you. Do you know the house? On pillars rests its roof, the hall shines it. Quote, it is the chamber, and marble images stand and look at me. What have you poor child, done? You probably know it. Then, Then would I go, O my protector, with you? Do you know the mountain and its cloud path? Quote, it is the chamber, and marble images stand and look at me. What have you, you poor child, done? You probably know it. Then, would I go, O my protector, with you? Do you know the mountain and its cloud path? Quote, the mule finds his in the fog away. The rock crashes it. The rock crashes it, and over it the flood. You know him well. Then, the mule finds his in the fog away, lives in caves of the old dragons born. The rock crashes it. The rock crashes it, and over it the flood. You know him well. Then, oh Father, let us go. Do you know the land where the lemons bloom? The gold orange glow in the dark foliage, and blows a gentle breeze from the blue sky. The myrtle still high stands of laurel, you know it well. It is the chamber, and marble images stand and look at me. Stand and look at me.
So something that happened while wasn't planned, but is a nice kind of congruence, is that the maybe I should just let her talk. Is that the first images taken at the house were also the first type of photography that became available to kind of photographers, because before that time, so it was around 1860 that Goethe died, and then they decided to try and contain the house as a shrine, as it was. And then this was, of course, almost beginning of photography. And you can see in the whole collection that it starts with silver gelatin prints, and then the glass negatives, and it goes through all the phases that photography went through. So it also becomes, of course, maybe a work on how do people look at what is authentic, or what is in fact history, and rewriting it as we go along. Something I do as well. I realized this morning I was already rewriting what I had written yesterday to present to you. Of course, every day when you wake up, you have a new outlook, hopefully, on what you want and what you want to present. So the next work I would like to show you came about because I had found in the anarchist library, which is actually a great source of writing, probably also for you. It collects and makes available for free texts by anarchists in the past and present. I found a text, an essay by Mustafa Kayati, who used to be in the circle of situationists with Guy Debord, and like many got kicked out when he did not behave. interestingly, at the time, which was in the 50s also, so not so long after the Second World War, he was from Tunisia and had maybe a closer relationship to people from Palestine, and dared to question the behavior of Israelis against Palestinians. And at the time that was completely faux pas, and he was then kind of not even only kicked out of the Situationist movement, but no one ever heard of him again. It's like if I try and look him up, I only find a very, very small picture of him behind someone else, like mistakenly probably put online. He must still be alive. And he wrote this very lucid essay on a need for a new language, making the observation that if you want to change things in life, you cannot suffice, not sure. You cannot stick to speaking the language of those people you are trying to convince of other thoughts. So if you truly want to change things, you will have to come up with your new language. I think I have a quote by him. Well, maybe I don't. Let me see. No, I don't think I prepared it. It also doesn't matter. But it's probably best if you look it up yourself. The essay is called Captive Words, a new dictionary for the Situationist movement. And he goes very far in explaining, like, from Stalin to does he even speak about the Wiener Kreis? I'm not sure. That in the past people have, of course, tried to come up with new languages in different oppressed situations. And as his essay is called A Preface to a New Dictionary, I was hoping all the time to find an actual new word, like, please come up with an example. But he doesn't. It's only like a manifesto for trying other people to do that. And so in the end I thought I would take his essay as a kind of a question to myself, then maybe I should try. And I didn't manage to do it, but I think I show the attempt in a way that maybe shows the struggle between, shows the struggle of finding the new language. I called the installation that I made out of it The Poet. It was also at the time that I was very fed up with performing on stage, feeling I'm not the best presenter of my work. Also thinking that the poem should be maybe more free than being stuck to my body, which is quite disappointingly just this thing. Like, it has a certain age, looks like it has a certain gender, it has a specific accent, and I think I would like my poetry to be more free than that. And of course, if you have a written word, you can still hope it has a kind of less body-connected presence. But as soon as I stand here and talk, you might think, oh, she looks like my aunt, and not listen anymore, or, well, whatever you think. It kind of disturbs, I think, what I'm trying to maybe tell you. And so I thought I make a machine, and the machine can travel for me. And if I have a occasion to read the poetry, I'll send the machine. And maybe the machine is not made well enough, because the problem is I always have to be there to have him make him work. It works on dry ice and music and, well, no, sound and the sound of words. The idea is, you'll see it in a moment in the video, but so this is where the dry ice goes in, this is where the sound comes out, and the bubble that will be made out of the pressure of the dry ice melting. The idea is that the sound goes into the bubble. And I think that the new language, if there is any such thing, is more in the shape of these bubbles than in the actual words you'll hear.
So when I saw how.
Oh, sorry.
So when I saw when I try to say, to speak, mutter, form the outlines of my utterance, the words are like clouds in my mouth, pale moths, paper dust wings, crumbles of crayon, broken points of a pencil. Make the points broken, chewed on chewing pencils that draw a perfect O. The planet O, gets in the way of finding the words, solemnly tucked away in a place I cannot quite reach, or will I now? When I try.
So I think you get the the idea. I won't show the whole thing. I think because there's 10 more minutes. I'm wondering if I'll present another work or leave some space for questions as well. Maybe one more funny work that happened while I was preparing this lecture. I'll skip this one. This is a very beautiful quote, but we won't have time for it. Maybe you can just read it. About 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe even longer, I got very fascinated by the stools I have at my house, which are copies, very blunt copies of the original designed by Alvar Aalto. I will go, sorry, we're skipping all this. You may have one yourself at home. The Frosta stool by IKEA. Are you familiar with it? Are you also familiar with the original? Yes, no? Yeah. Maybe yes. So the only thing that IKEA did was add another pootje, just a leg. And I had seen some images of the Alvar Aalto house, which is incredibly beautiful, designy beautiful. And I had this longing, or maybe curiosity, to place some of the Frosta IKEA stools inside this original setting. I thought that would be really great. And to also kind of enforce a dialogue, maybe even write dialogue between these two stools about who they are, where they come from, what is their nature, how do they look at each other, the original and the copy. And I explained in a quite polite email to the Alvar Aalto Foundation, so hello everyone, would it be possible for me to film this situation? And I was very excited because in my studio I built versions of these with 5, 7, 8 legs, like they become like these spiders, monsters. And in my mind they were already walking around in the living room of Alvar Aalto, who was the original designer, of course. And I said, yeah, I only need 1 day to film, is that possible? And they replied to me, it was in 2015 already, they replied to me, we're very sorry, but it won't be possible because we are in a court case with IKEA. And we think it's a very sensitive issue and it might not help our case. And I thought, well, it was already a bit strange because actually I would just be kind of showing the problems of the court case. I thought maybe I can even talk to the lawyers. I would be super interested in hearing the arguments, the defenders of why it would be okay to have the Frosta and the people who would not agree. But I was held off, and for this lecture, I thought I have to actually see what's up. Like maybe the court case has already been settled. And Tommy Lind from the Alvar Aalto Foundation replied to me, to my great joy, we have won the court case. There are no more Frosta stools to be ever made. So if you are smart, go and get them now, because they are still in the opslag of IKEA. I'm sure they will become valuable as well. Not to say that I think it's so great that these copies exist. I mean, I live together with a designer who tries and put his own designs on the market. And of course, it's exactly these kind of copycats, this whole industry that makes it very, very hard for independent designers to get their stuff out into the world for a normal price, because people are not used to paying this price anymore. So I am aware of all of that. But still, I think it's kind of exciting that such a kind of icon is suddenly taken off the market. And yeah. And this, I want to share you the last reply, because I know I can be stubborn, and I asked Tommy Lind one more time, but isn't then this exactly the right moment for me to come to Finland and do my film? And this is what he replied. Hi. I didn't think it was a good idea then, and I don't think it's a good idea now. So I'd like to leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for this wonderful presentation. All of you, thank you for being here. I think it was an interesting presentation. I think the classes are starting now, so I don't think we have room for questions, but see you next time. For the PhD students, you can gather here in front of the, yeah, you know. De studenten semiotiek van Arne, die mogen nog even blijven als zij nog vragen zouden hebben voor Maria. Dus die gaat Arne nog een beetje tijd geven. Ja, ik denk dat je nog wat staat. Nee, het was heel leuk.